Hi everybody. In this video, we're going to go over some practice problems that you covered in your math class last week. Number 1 says, which equation represents the following table? Now looking at the table, I see that we have an X column and a Y column. Looking at our answer choices, I see that there are 4 different equations, and all of the equations are written in the form of Y equals something with X. So the first choice I see here says Y equals 2X, which means Y equals 2 times X. So I'm just going to write that underneath. That means 2 times X. The second one says Y equals 1/2 X, which means 1/2 times X as well. You could put a times symbol there. The second one says, or the third one, excuse me, says Y equals X minus 7. And the last one says Y equals X plus 7. So now our job is to figure out the relationship or the pattern between X and Y that matches up with the equation. So our first X value is 14, and then it becomes a 7. So what could I do to X to make it become Y? So what could I do to 14 to get 7? Well, I know that 14 minus 7 is 7, and that's an answer choice. But if I want to pick that, it has to work every time. So now I'm going to check the next row, and I'm going to try minus 7 again. 16 minus 7. And I got my answer as 9. The table says that the answer should be 8. So X minus 7 is not a good choice here. So we can eliminate that. So now let's try and figure out another equation that might work for every single row. What can we do to X that will give us Y? So right away, we noticed that minus 7 worked for the first row, but not for the other rows. So if I wanted to check my other equations, I could use Desmos to help me if I don't notice a pattern. So the first row tells me that when X is 14, Y should be 7. So one of the equations I have here says Y equals X plus 7. If I take this X value of 14 and I add 7 to it, like it says to in the equation, I get an answer of 21. And according to the table, my answer should be 7. So I know that X plus 7 is not a good choice here because it doesn't even work in the first row. So if it's not adding or subtracting by the same thing every time, then we must be multiplying by something every time. So our two choices that we have left are Y equals 2 times X or Y equals 1/2 times X. Well, right away, I know that when I do 14 times 2, I'm going to get a bigger number, not something small like 7. When I do 16 times 2, I should get a bigger number, not something smaller like 8. So I don't think 2x is my answer here, but just to be safe, I'm going to check. So this means 2 times x, so that means I would do 2 times 14. And sure enough, the answer is 28, and the table says the answer should be 7. So y equals 2 times x is not a good choice because it doesn't match the rule from the table. So the last choice we have here is y equals 1/2 times x. So if I want to figure out if that's the correct rule here, I need to plug in every x value to make sure it gives me the correct y value. So I'm going to type in 1/2 times, and I'm going to use my first x value of 14. And I get 7. If I want to check, so this first row was good, it worked, because 14 times 1/2 gave us 7. So now let's check to make sure that when we do 16 times 1/2, we get 8. So I can type in 1/2 times 16, and the answer is 8. So the second row in my table also works with that equation. 16 times 1/2 will give me 8. Now let's check to see that 18 times 1/2 will give us 9. And sure enough, it also worked for that last row in the table. So our best choice here is that y equals 1/2 x, which really means y equals 1/2 times x. Let's go to the next question. Number 2 says, which graph has a slope of 1/4 and passes through the point with the ordered pair of 4, 1? So the question gave us two pieces of information to help us solve. The first thing they did was told us that the ordered pair here is 4, 1. Remember, your ordered pairs are always written with the x-coordinate first and the y-coordinate second. When you want to plot an ordered pair in the coordinate plane, you always start at the origin, or 0, 0. The first value, or your x-coordinate, tells you how far left or right to go. Your second value, which is your y-coordinate, tells you how far up or down to go. So since our first x-coordinate here is a positive 4, from the origin, we need to go right 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Since our y value is a positive 1, from here, we need to go up 1. Now that I've followed both the x-coordinate and the y-coordinate, I can plot my point. So this is the point that represents the ordered pair 4, 1. Now right away, I notice graph 1 does have this point on the red line, but I need to check the other graphs as well, and I also have to make sure that I have the correct slope. So I can't pick this just yet. So let's look at graph 2. I'm just going to check for the ordered pair and see if I can eliminate graph 2 right away. So start at my origin, I go right 4 and up 1. Is that ordered pair on this red line? No, so graph 2 is not a good choice. Looking at graph 3, if I start at my origin and go right 4 and up 1, that point is nowhere near this red line, so graph 3 is also a bad choice. And graph 4, I start at the origin, I go right 4 and up 1. The ordered pair 4, 1 would be here, and that is not on this red line, so graph 4 is also a bad choice. So I'm pretty sure the answer is graph number 1 because it's the only graph with this ordered pair, but I also want to check for a slope of 1/4. Remember, slope means rise over run. So 1 is our rise, and 4 is our run. So we want to start at the origin, and we want to count our distance from this point to this point. We want to make sure we rise 1, so we go up 1, and that we run or move right 4. So from here I go right 1, 2, 3, 4. So sure enough, graph number 1 has the ordered pair of 4, 1, and it had the slope of 1/4 because we saw a rise of 1 and a run of 4. So graph 1 is our best choice here. Let's look at the next question. Number 3 says, which graph represents the equation y equals 3x? So I noticed that 3 is in front of x, which means that we are multiplying 3 times x. Remember, when they give you an equation written in the form y equals m times x, this letter m really represents the slope. So in our equation y equals 3x, our slope is the number in front of x, which is 3. So if our slope is 3, then we need to find the graph A or B, that also has a slope of 3. However, we need to be careful because slope is going to look like rise over run. So we've got one number, but we're actually looking for 2 numbers here to count slope. But we don't need to worry because anytime we've got a whole number like this, we can put it over 1 because 3 divided by 1 still equals 3. 3 over 1 and 3 are the same thing. So now I know I'm looking for a rise of 3 and a run of 1. Another thing that's really special about this kind of graph when we see a multiplication graph like this, it's called proportional, is that graph should always go through the origin, 0, 0. Looking at these two graphs, the only graph that starts at the origin or goes through the origin is graph A. So now from here, I should be able to rise 3, 1, 2, 3, and run 1, and that point should also be on the line. So again, I just rise 3, up 3, and then run 1, right 1, and sure enough, that point is on the line. So graph A is the best graph here because it goes through the origin and it has a slope of 3 over 1. Graph B does not work because it does not go through the origin. And here's a point on the line of graph B, and here's another point on the line of graph B. If I try to count the slope here, I'm going to rise 1 and run 1. So this graph has a slope of 1 over 1, which is just 1. So graph B is not the best choice here. Question 4 says, which table of values corresponds to y equals x plus 10? So what it's asking us is if I take an x value in the table and I add 10 to it, will it equal y? So we're looking for the table that follows this rule every time. Plus 10 should equal y. X plus 10 should equal y. So to figure out which one works, we're going to have to test each row in the table because they will love to give us choices that work sometimes, but not every time. So the first, oh, and I can use my Desmos calculator if I need to, so I'm going to go ahead. So my first table here, our x value is 1, and if I do 1 plus 10, I should get 11. So the first row here in table A is correct. In the second row, my x value is 2. So when I do 2 plus 10, according to this table, I should get 13. But 2 plus 10 is 12. So the second row in the table does not work. So choice A is not a good choice here. Let's look at choice B. My first x value is 3. If I do 3 plus 10, is that going to give me 30? No, 3 plus 10 is 13. So because this first row does not work, B is a bad choice. It actually looks like the row or the rule here is times 10. So just be careful. We're looking for x plus 10. Y equals x plus 10. The next table, table C, has an x value of 8 and the y value equals negative 2. Well, right away, I know that 8 plus 10 is not going to give me a negative number. 8 plus 10 is going to give me 18. So this row does not work. So table C is a bad choice. So last but not least, we have table D. So our first x value here is 4. When I do 4 plus 10, I should get 14. So my first row here works. We still need to check the last two rows because sometimes they'll throw one in there that doesn't work just to trick you. So my next x value is 5. When I do 5 plus 10, I get 15. So that second row is also correct. And hopefully you caught on to the pattern now. 6 plus 10 is also 16. So table D is the correct choice here because the rule every time is that x plus 10 will give you y. Number 5 says, Margaret has $200 in her account. She will put $50 into the account each week. Which table represents this situation? So the first thing I want you to notice is that they tell you that Margaret starts or has $200 in her account to begin with. So that means the first row in the table before any weeks have happened, so at week 0, Margaret should have $200 in her account already. Which tables start with $200? Choice C and choice A. If you look at choice B, this table is showing that she starts with $50 in her account, and choice D is also saying that she starts with $50 in her account, and we know that's not correct. So we can go ahead and eliminate choice B and choice D because they did not start with $200 in the account. Now it says she will put $50 into the account each week. So each week, Margaret is going to add another $50 into her account. So each week, we should see the money in her account increasing or going up by $50. So looking at table A, we go from 200 to 250. Well, that's plus 50. And then from 250 to 300, that's also plus 50. And from 300 to 350, that's also plus 50. So table A shows that Margaret started with $200 and added $50 to her account every week. If you look at choice C, well, $50 is used here, but look, the amount in her account went down. It looks like she took $50 out of her account here. That would be minus 50. So C would not be correct. Let's look at the last question. Question number 6 says solve. T divided by 5 plus 15 equals negative 40. So remember, when you get a two-step equation like this with a variable The variable represents an unknown number. And our job is to get the variable, or t, all by itself so that we can figure out what the correct value is. So I want you guys to know how to solve this by hand, but you can use your Desmos calculator to check your answer, and I'll show you how to do that at the end. So if our goal is to solve for t, we want to get this t divided by 5 by itself, and then we'll break it apart from the 5 so that t is all alone. So before we look at the t divided by 5, we need to cancel out or get rid of this plus 15 because we want nothing but t left on this left-hand side of the equation. So I need to think to myself, what is the opposite of plus 15? Well, I know the opposite of addition is subtraction. Oops. All right, there we go. So I know the opposite of addition is subtraction, so I'm going to subtract, and I want to get rid of this entire plus 15, so I'm going to subtract 15. Oops, keep pressing that eraser. And because we need to keep our equation balanced, when we subtract 15 on the left side of the equal sign, we also need to subtract 15 on the right side of the equal sign. So remember that positive 15 minus 15 equals 0. So these end up canceling each other out, and that leaves you with just this part that we had in the front, t divided by 5. And that's going to be equal to negative 40 minus 15. So you can use Desmos to help you here as you go. What is negative 40 minus 15? It should say negative 55. So then you can come over here and write that down. Now remember, my goal is still to get t by itself, so I need to get rid of this other operation that's happening here. What's happening to t? It's being divided by 5, and I want to undo that. So what's the opposite of division? Well, that would be multiplication. Because t is being divided by 5, I can multiply by 5 on both sides, and that will cancel out the divide by 5 and leave me with just t on the left. And on the right now, I need to do negative 55 times 5, and that will tell me what the value of t is. Negative 55 times 5 is negative 275. So A is the best choice here. Now, if you didn't remember those steps and you wanted to solve with Desmos, there is another way you could do this. So I'm going to get rid of my work. Remember that our answer was A, and we proved it with our steps. So another way we could figure this out is by taking the side of the equation that has the variable in it. So here, that's the left side, and we're going to type it into Desmos. So t divided by 5 plus 15. Remember, you want it to look exactly like it does in the picture. So just that side of the equation with the variable in it, and then I'm going to hit enter. Now, I want to go ahead and type in t equals, and I can take these answer choices below and plug them in. When I plug in the answer for t, I should see negative 40 pop up here in Desmos. So if negative 40 shows up here, then I have the right answer. If it doesn't show up here, then I don't have the right answer. So let's start with B, negative 125. When I type in a negative 125, notice Desmos says the answer is negative 10, and that was not what we want it to say. We want it to say negative 40, so B is a bad choice. Now let's check D, 11. When I plug in 11, I see that the y value is 17.2, and we want it to say negative 40, so 11 is also a bad choice. Now let's plug in 125. When I plug that in, I see the answer is 40, which kind of looks like what I want, but remember, our answer should say negative 40. So even though this is close, we can't pick C because it has to have the exact same answer, including the sign. So last, we can check for negative 275, and sure enough, it says the answer is negative 40, just like we expected. Thanks for tuning in to our video this week. I hope that was helpful. Have a